On this episode of Truth Serum with Tyler Minton, we have my friend Tex McQuilkin. Chris is a coach, educator, and former collegiate athlete who's worked with tactical professionals, elite level athletes, and everyday grinders who just want to move and perform better. In this episode, we talk about athlete development, the importance of shared suffering in the team dynamic, and the importance of movement over movements. If you're a coach, athlete, or someone who's just looking to be better, listen in. There's a lot of electrolyte supplements out there, so I know you have options, but you don't need to be wasting your time and money on supplements that give delayed results. That's why Protekt Hydration is a superior electrolyte supplement. Since it's a liquid and not a powder, it's ready to work immediately. And since its electrolyte ratios match those lost in sweat, it's designed to do exactly what it's supposed to do. So stop wasting your time with powders and head over to protekt.com/truth and start supplementing like it matters. You can train hard, eat clean, and do everything right, but if your sleep sucks, you won't make a lot of progress. That's why I use Tuft and Needle. Their original mattress keeps your spine aligned, your temperature controlled, and helps you recover better each night. And this Memorial Day, they're running a sale, and that's 20% off the original mattress and 40% off all bedding. It's a pretty simple formula. Better sleep equals better performance. So hit the link in the show notes and fix your sleep. So Tex McQuilkin, Tex, as I've always known you.
Yeah, that's cool.
As most people will know you. We met years ago through, I believe it was the CrossFit football specialty certification, which a lot of people might not know about, but that's something we can talk about later. But now you've kind of come around to what you're doing, and you're wearing the shirt here. You have your own company, your own brand called Captains and Coaches. Talk a little bit about that, like what the mission is of that and what you're doing.
So there's a lot of assumptions with sport and leadership. So my aim is to target that first year, that 0 to 1 leader on both the athlete side and the coach side. So if you're an awesome kid, you're doing everything right, or you're a quarterback, so they assume you're in a leadership role and position, coaches hand these kids the responsibility of the team. So if I'm doing everything right, I'm leading by example, all of a sudden coach puts the onus on the kid to get the rest of the team to start to act that way. Get them to do what you do. Get them to do it like you do it. That's a huge assumption. And on the other side of the coin for the coach, you are handed responsibility. You go from athlete to coach. Your first year, that is a major transition. So now you're on the other side of things. You want to connect with the guys and still be the athlete with the team. However, now you're responsible for their performance. So there is just this giant gap of knowledge, of experience that is just assumed and put on either kids or first-year coaches, and it breaks a lot of them. And then they start to have a negative association with putting themselves out there, relationship building, decision-making, and then they begin to shy away from that. And a lot of kids then, they shy away from leadership. A lot of coaches then move on from coaching. And we've seen it. We've been in the game a long time, and there's coaches that maybe 1, 2, 3 years in, they decide this is not for them. So that's the aim, that's the target, and going to connect with athletes, going to connect with service members, going to connect with coaches, and speak to that gap, that assumption, that 0 to 1 leadership.
Yeah, and that's, in my own experience, I think a lot about my old coach from high school football. So these guys, pretty much all of our coaches came straight from college. So I think about Coach Ralph Nelson, 2002, my freshman year of high school, straight out of UT. And then you had like the bench press record at UT, and was just this stud athlete. And then he gets thrown into the coaching world. And not only is he now coaching, he's coaching a team, Sullivan East, little county school, that was just known for not being good at football. That was what it was known for. I want to say the best season at that point they'd ever had was 5-5. No one expected anything of us. And this guy comes in from, if you live in Tennessee, UT is the school. And he comes in from there, and there's so much hype around it. And now he's still a coach, a very successful coach at another school in our area. But I think about the fact that, this is a long time. There's been a long difference between then, how different things would have been for him as a coach. Straight from college, you're no longer an athlete. You're now expected to coach athletes, and all of the changes around that, and having to put on the game face of a coach instead of an athlete.
Oh yeah, and so I'm sure if you had the conversation with him to reflect on that first year, he has a whole list, a whole book of mistakes and things that he would have done differently, right? Probably try to break a lot of eggs to make an omelet versus meeting the kids where they're at. So they got better, they improved, awesome. But at the same time, what could have been done? Was there any kids on the team where you responded to that? Any kids on the team that did not respond to that? Now they have a negative association with hard work, weightlifting, athletics, due to that experience. I don't know. I wasn't there. So just start to call these out, shine a light on that. And then I'm referring to these as coaching scars. This is a term from Harrison Burdenstein, who's with, I'm trying to call, but Soldiers to Sidelines is his company. So he takes soldiers, their leadership experience, and then finds coaching positions for them, basketball, football, lacrosse, whatever their past sport was. So that's a coaching term that I got from him, but coaching scars that then leave these negative associations with people that then carry on and affect their lives.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, as you're saying that, I'm trying to think back to some of the things he did. There's a million positive things he did. Number one, he took us to a 10-2 season, a couple years later. So it's obviously, he accomplished the goal, but I'm trying to think of other things he did that I don't even know if he did them purposefully to get the outcome he wanted. Like, I remember, we're just a bunch of county kids, poor county school. No one expects anything of us. And he's bringing in Scott Gallion, who's, I believe that's his name, from the Miami Dolphins, a buddy of his from the NFL, to come meet with us. He's bringing his brother, who at the time was a Virginia Tech star, a lineman. And he's bringing these guys to meet with us and talk with us. And, we're amazed by it. We have crappy old equipment. One of the first things he does is like, hey, we're changing everything. All new equipment, all new helmets, shoulder pads. Everything is brand new. We're going to raise the money for it ourselves. We were the Patriots. We went from a royal blue to a navy blue. And little things. He started making all these little changes to just make us feel special.
Yeah.
And like to build some hype around it. We're going to build a field house. We didn't have a field house. We had a locker room that smelled, all football locker rooms have a distinct smell. But this smelled like Judgment Day. It was just terrible. We're going to build a field house, and we're going to move. Football is going to be in this field house with our weight room and our nice locker rooms. And he did all of this stuff. And I remember that just made us feel so special. And I wasn't thinking about it then, but I'm starting to think, how did that in turn, benefit us in a performance aspect?
Oh, I mean, just mentally, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it and his mindset. So he's aiming to inspire you so you could now have models to aspire to become. Before that, labels were put on all of you athletes, and that's what I want to do is shine light on those labels so that you don't identify as that. You identify what you can believe you're going to be. So making coaches aware of what they're saying, making parents especially, big target after parents of what they say, that now kids start to internalize themselves as whatever that may be. So that's a big part of it. But then like highlighting and hearing awesome stories like that. So now he's changing the colors. He's buying new equipment. So you start to associate yourselves as winners in good teams versus whatever the label is and any other curse that may be believed to be on this program or team. He's like, no, it's out. Kill it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And then, but that's forward thinking at the same time. So, and I'm sure again, there's a lot of things he would have changed that first year, and then he's still in the game. So that's how, like, I know he's an awesome coach because there's no failure. There's only feedback.
Yeah.
So I imagine he's changing and making adjustments every single year as he is every single practice, every single game.
Yeah. And I think back, you said you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. He broke a lot of eggs. And I'm thinking like he knew he could get that. And this sounds funny, but like as freshmen, they're obviously sophomore, juniors, and seniors all at that time. But I was the first group to come in as a freshman, so I had him for 4 years.
You only knew one thing.
Yes, and I don't think I'm exaggerating because I've talked to other football players since then, and I wasn't a great football player, but I was invested, and we would have died for that guy. We had such buy-in, and in fact, we did a 2-week summer thing. I'm wanting to say 1 week was 2-a-days, and the third week or the second week was 3-a-days, with the third just being like film and such. But like that's not even allowed now. You can't do those things now. And I just remember one time waking up in the middle of the night screaming because I had never experienced a calf cramp like that. Like I was just broken. I'd never experienced it, but I was ready to go back the next day.
Yeah.
Because we all just bought in so much into what he was doing. We would do testing every year where we would do truck pushes and tire flips. And I don't know. It was just, you were taking kids. Yeah. And I look back and I feel like that's the first time laughing now. I'm 36, but I remember being this kid, 2000, I guess I would have been 15, and you're like, we're men.
Yeah.
Like, we're becoming men. And I remember that feeling.
If you want the absolute best protein source, then I have it for you. It's Axis Deer from my friends at Maui Nui Venison in Hawaii. It's not only the best protein source, but also the best tasting. And Maui Nui is now offering Truth Serum listeners a limited selection at my favorite cuts of venison. Remember, deer are wild, naturally organic, and grass-fed animals, so supply is always limited. So head over to mauinuivenison.com/truth. That's MAUI venison.com/truth and start eating deer. Half-Face Blades makes 100% American-made knives for the world's best military operators, hunters, and chefs. People who need knives to make a living or stay alive. That's why I trust them with my own everyday carry knife. So if things like buying American and high performance matter to you, head over to halffaceblades.com and throw away your cheap gas station knives.
That's what a tire does. Like it's big, it's heavy, it was daunting, but now you got the opportunity to do it. And then that action is reinforced. So now, okay, that's one domino to fall, and then another domino. So that's a small piece of the puzzle. My first Division I coaching job, Georgetown University, and it was Coach Kevin Warren, who's still there. In lacrosse, you're there for 3 years or 30. He's still with Georgetown, which is awesome. This is 2012, my first semester as a D1 coach. And then with coaching with Sean Foster, I got to give him credit. So he was head of the Lax sport coach. Warren wanted us to change the culture and make everybody quit spring sport for lacrosse. So that fall, we got to have a lot of fun and basically go against all the strength and conditioning rule books because he wanted the guys that were willing to then go to battle in the spring with him. So the guys that were left in that year, they turned the program around, were able to make the Big East tournament for the first time. Only 4 teams go in lacrosse for the first time in a long time. So that was an awesome to be a part and see Coach Warren just from the sidelines do his thing and then just have a simple task of, all right, we're going to make guys quit in a prudent way. Nobody got hurt. They just made the decision to no longer work that hard to be a part of that team.
I like the way you put that. And I mean, I didn't intend for this to be a recollection of my own high school experiences, but it really goes into kind of what you're saying. I can think about coaches I had in the past in other sports and things. And, that I don't think they purposely did anything, but even sports I was better at. Like I was better at maybe baseball than football, but I hated baseball because I look back and I think of coaches I had and I have very negative opinions. I had one coach that I thought was really good, but I think back at other ones and I'm like, dude, they didn't manage us in a good way. They didn't make it fun. They almost, they almost liked the fact that it was just all suck and no reward to it. And nothing was harder than football. Like I said, that was the hardest thing I'd experienced. And the fact of the matter is, in modern day and age, there's people my age who have never experienced anything that hard in their entire life. And there was just something about all of us coming together and getting through that together that made us want to do it. And I know you use the term shared suffering. I remember this with some of the CrossFit football stuff. And, like I'm doing this and it sucks, but I also know my buddy next to me is also doing this and I don't want to let him down. So I'm not going to stop. And how do you use shared suffering? And what does that mean for the person who might not know exactly what that means in context of sport?
So this is team psychology. This is the psychology of discomfort. And then motivation. So there's a lot of levers to pull here to do it well, because y'all worked hard together and it brought the team together. So there's a certain way to take this and approach that versus just having everybody work hard alone, even though they're all doing the same workout. So the shared suffering is crucial, and it's finding, again, prudent. This means safe and effective. I'm going to apply an exercise, a tool, a program, and it accomplishes my intended goal. If it did not, it's not prudent. I need to rethink things. So prudent is going to be a key word for a lot of this stuff. So with psychology of discomfort, the shared suffering, what I'm going to do is a lot of pillar work, side pillars, dead bugs. So those suck. Isometrics suck, but we're all doing it. And then it's clear as day to you, to me, to the rest of the team if somebody goes down. Now, how does the team start to get them back up in an up position? How are they treating them? Are they, MFing them, or are they building them up? So those small changes, I put people in isometrics. We're suffering together. And then you experience this at the seminar. We're suffering together, and I'm seeing how leaders lead. Because if the leaders of the team are now negative and pulling people down, okay, now I need to lead an individual. So we're all still going to do our strength program, but I'm going to speak to the leaders on how they're communicating to the rest of the team. If I hear that they're rising up and they're encouraging their people to get up, but some kids they can't physically do it, or they believe that they can't physically do it, now I'm going to go in and step in and communicate to them. So it could be pillars, it could be runs. And then I always want to run within my eyesight, right? I'm not going to send team to go out and run 3 miles or a mile and pound pavement. It's going to be within the track and the field. So that way I can see how people are responding to stress. So the psychology of discomfort, I'm looking how they react as an individual, positive or negative. I'm seeing how the team, because I want a living, breathing team to support each other, is responding to stress. So a lot of that is just applying our normal exercise, strength and conditioning tools, but I'm targeting and then eyeing the behavior and doing nothing that will harm or hurt guys. I don't want anybody getting shin splints. That's the big thing. I work with lacrosse and football, so multi-sport athletes. Shin splints are big. So aiming to load manage. I hate that term, but it's real. So now aiming to do that and still target behavior. So shared suffering is working out. I mean, we see a lot of community gyms, just Gen Pop gyms do it well when they start to build a community. We also see a lot of gyms do it poorly when you start to have resentment across the squat rack from somebody else. If somebody's an asshole in there, it's going to affect the rest of the community. And more often than not, they weed themselves out. So this idea, this concept, if you know what to look for, can be applied to teams, sports, athletics, and Gen Pop's gyms. Usually the Gen Pop gyms self-correct. And if you get too many assholes in there, then the whole thing self-corrects and your good people go somewhere else.
Yeah. So it's very much an assessment tool as well. It's not just about the suffering. It's to assess the leaders and assess how people work together.
Yeah. Because if they suffer, but they start to treat each other poorly, guess what? If we're in a tough game and we're down in the third, fourth quarter, that's how they're going to behave. They're going to start dragging each other down. If their teammate makes a mistake, they're going to turn around and MF them, or turn to the coach and then vocally say, get this guy out of here. That's not what we want, because we're going to have to be a team the further we go. Seasons are long. If we want to make a deep run in the playoffs, when the going gets tough and everybody's tired, we want to treat each other well. So it's as much behavior as it is conditioning, really.
Yeah, I think as a coach too, you have to be careful because there's different ways to go about it. So you can gain respect from the I've been there, done that. And I think that's important. I always personally respected the coach more because, again, Coach Nelson, he played football at a high level, was good at it. So it's easy to accept what he's saying because he's done it.
Yeah.
And then I think Coach Carter, who is another one of our coaches with Nelson, who just finished as an Army Ranger. And he came in, we used to joke and call him Universal Soldier behind his back. We didn't call him anything but coach to his face.
I think you would admire that.
Yeah.
He may have made you run, but deep down, it's like,
Yeah. But we knew that anything he assigned, he could do it better. Like if he's making you run, yeah, he could outrun you too. And I remember there was that aspect of that. You respect them because you know they've been there and done that. And I think that's important. But at the same time, that can't be all you have, because you don't look at a Nick Saban and say like, well, no, he could do this. Well, no, he couldn't. But it doesn't matter. He has other ways to manage that respect. And a lot of that is wins, like the proof's in the pudding, So I think it's knowing how to gain the respect you need and then adjusting that. Maybe as we talk about training age with athletes, I don't know if there's like coaching age, like you have to manage that respect.
yes. So there is coaching age. Call it life cycle of a coach. That's why I'm targeting that first year, because that's an assumption of authority. And the same mistakes, and I see parallels at least between a team captain and a first-year coach. I got the C in my chest. You have to listen to me now. No, I don't. Well, kids are assholes, so they'll turn around and just whatever the leader says to them, they're just going to say no. Same with a first-year coach. They're going to trying to step in and be authority or try to be too buddy-buddy. So finding that line to walk, and that's the beauty. And what I'm targeting is emotional quotient, the EQ of a coach. So that first year is such a great growth opportunity, and they need to find a way to relate, not become friends with their athletes, but relate to them. And then this is one of the best things is finding out what music they like, what's going on in school. So finding ways to connect with them and relate to them versus just step in if you have to listen to me because I was a Division I linebacker or I bench pressed this. You have to listen to me. No. They're going to find their way out of that team, maybe not coaching, but find their way off that team if they can't connect and relate to their athletes, because their athletes are not going to listen to them. Why do they listen? Relationship and respect comes before rules.
I do think you have to find, as a coach, you have to find common ground. Like you have to find something. And I think of something I've done, and I might be giving myself away here to where I won't be able to do it anymore. But I think in particular about, there was an NBA athlete that I was going to go meet and to discuss and consult with him. Well, before the meeting, I went and purchased Air Jordans that were the colors of his college. Specifically, I mean, they were named for, I knew that for a purpose. I didn't have them before because I wanted that to be noticed.
Yeah.
And I wore those into my first meeting with this athlete and sit down, and I'm dressed very nicely in a very, very nice outfit and sports coat with Air Jordans of his college colors. And the first thing he mentions, he's like, I love those Air Jordans.
There you go.
And I was like, yeah, man, I've got, these are one of my favorite pairs. I wasn't going to say I've had these for 48 hours, my man.
You don't have to.
but little things like that, I try to find ways to connect with that person.
Yeah.
I even think even from a clinical point of view, even like during my clinical internships, when I was working at the VA and volunteering at the VA, I would try to look up more than, I wanted to look at more than this person's nutrition and medical history. I would look at what branch they were in.
Yeah.
And if I was going into the room of a Marine, I would address them as Marine, or I would address these guys sometimes as their rank, or I would the Army, I'm like, hey, soldier, different things just to try to find little ways to connect. Yeah. And I noticed that because of that, I could make connections that other practitioners maybe couldn't. And I don't think that's anything, it's obviously not proprietary, but I think it's things that I learned from having good coaches in the past that they didn't tell me they were doing that, but I picked up on it.
Yeah. So that's the first step in EQ is relating. And then the next step is starting to lead the emotional and the leadership and the response and the behavior of an individual. And once we can work one-on-one, now I'm in a position to better affect the emotional, the leadership of a team. So a lot of people just step into team leadership and then try to be the guy, the lightning in the bottle, the rah-rah, and then be awesome on Instagram. Yeah. But then everybody, the actual team in the locker room is like, okay, whatever, shut up.
Yeah.
So it is a stepping stone process through that. A lot of people just want to jump to the team because they see the awesome dudes at the Power 5 football programs. They earned that respect. They earned the ability to bring that action, bring that energy, And every single one of those guys is ready to listen and follow them as they sprint out the tunnel before Saturday. However, all we see on Instagram is the rah-rah, the pump-up speech. They didn't know what it took, the years, the summer program. So this is the challenge with coaching now and developing coaches. Strength and conditioning, it is a degree. You can get a 4-year degree and never coach anyone. So this is part of the mission, is to target that first year. You have the smarts. I'm sure you can write an amazing program, but can you get an athlete to execute it with your intention? That's going to take reps.
Yeah, I like that. And there's not a college for coaches. These are things like coaches have to learn.
Yeah.
You got to figure it out before you get in there. And I've never thought about it in that point, how many coaches get buried in their first couple of years. They never really reach their full potential because they weren't taking advantage of those things. Maybe they didn't know them.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So aiming to just bring some awareness, shine some light, and then put people in a better position to execute.
Like that. So you talk a lot about teaching movement and not movements.
Yeah.
That was something I remember in some classes I've taken with you that I didn't understand it at first. And the more I've gone on, it's become, as I've aged, it's become more obvious. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by movement, not movements?
Yeah. So use the weight room and then take this for any analogy within sport, especially of fighting. So if I was teaching an athlete a squat, I'm going to teach the squat this way. If I'm going to teach a bench press, I'm going to teach the bench press this way, the lunge this way. And then looking at all these different exercises as individual movements, plural. That's a lot of memory for an athlete to hold on to when they got a whole workout sheet. They also got a whole playbook. And they also got all their school and studies to memorize. The last thing that they're going to remember and recall is, okay, this is how I do this specific exercise. And then coaches get mad at them.
Yeah.
Because, coach, what's a power clean again? And they get frustrated. Dude, he's got so much on his plate, and he's still amazing, and he's still starting, whether or not he remembers what a power clean is. So the aim is to, when teaching all these movements, intentional plural there, is find the connections between each of them. So what setups are similar? If the feet setup are different on a deadlift versus a squat, what is similar between a deadlift and a squat? Okay, well, I know the head position and the posture I want locked in on whether I'm squatting or deadlifting. So I'm going to start there. So we start to teach posture first, and then just make the one adjustment, whether it's hand position, thumb width, that we need to. So what is connected to the exercises, and then what's the one adjustment I need to make? Then I'm just coaching and cueing the adjustment. There's also sports specific, not sports specific. This is a bad term, but the cueing, using their sport to help get them set up in the weight room. If we're talking about the squatting stance, where I want an athletic position, toes forward, knees over the arches, the insteps, and I'm working with football, linebacker, show me your setup in linebacker. So then I start with their sport to help teach the squat and the lift. So finding the connection between the sport and the weight room, and that's the language that I'm going to use to really coach them up. I'm not going to use pronation and supination and dorsiflexion in the weight room, talking with my football players or my lacrosse athletes. I'm going to speak to, okay, I'm going to use their sport to help get them in great positions. So again, we're teaching movement here. I'm just adding weight and recording it for this specific exercise on the card. But I want to help to start to bridge the gap between the weight room and the field, which this, very fortunate, my first coaching experience, my first coaching job was grad assistant coach for my lacrosse team. So they were my friends, they were my former teammates, and now they were my athletes. And so there is not a relationship between weightlifting and lacrosse like there is football and weightlifting. So a lot of football players come to college with high training age, lacrosse, not so much.
Yeah.
So I was introducing the weight room for the first time for a lot of these guys. So then what was my natural instinct? Okay, I'm just going to pull in the field because I got to hang out with them 2 hours at practice. Then we lift, or vice versa, however the schedule ran. So now I'm just using whatever the hell I talked about in sport practice to help guide in the weight room to get them set up in good positions.
I like that. And you always use this term, like I've heard this term used in the military and in mixed martial arts. You always fall back on your highest level of training.
Yeah.
Me, I wrestled before I fought. So no matter how often I went into a fight with the goal of striking, as soon as I got hit, I wrestled. You know, you always fall back on that. So I think it's important, and it says a lot that you use their sport to then cue them into the proper movement and position and patterns in the weight room, because at the end of the day, they're going to perform the sport far often than they are the training, the training itself. So that makes sense, because it's something they're already going to be familiar with. You have a stud senior, you know, in high school at linebacker, chances are he's assumed that athletic position in linebacker hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times already.
Yeah. And now I see where he fails under stress in a controlled environment. This is our weight room. It's just us and the weights. So now I can see where his foot position, his knee position, his posture, his back, or if we're fatigued. And this goes back to the behavior we talked about with the psychology of discomfort, the shared suffering. Now this is I'm still assessing, and I'm seeing where his body is failing him. And then I make adjustments in the program, or give him more of this accessory work, or then adjust wherever I need to in the program based off of how they're moving. So where the conditioning, that's for the behavior. And yes, I'll give it to the exercise physiologist, or replication of speed. Yes, I want to see how long it takes them to recover before we can go fast again, acknowledging that. And they're more coachable, then they're more willing to put forth effort to minimize that. So now weights are aiming to get strong, powerful, but still in assessment of where they fail and why they fail. And then we can use the weight room again to supplement that and improve their body. And then, I mean, the true test is sport competition performance out in games, because we can't replicate that demand, that intensity, that hype that, the whole team brings to the game.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about functional fitness, functional training. It drives me crazy. The term gets misused so much, and I see so many coaches, especially in the fight world, misusing functional training. And that's, I get, CrossFit is what made that popular. It's what made the term popular, but it's been manipulated improperly. And I think it was BJ Penn that they had first do the Fight Gone Bad workout, and they asked him what that felt like. He said, "Oh, it felt like a fight gone bad." So they called it Fight Gone Bad.
Did I know this?
And then you have people, oh, you didn't know that. It's an interesting, I'm almost positive it was BJ Penn. And then you have people doing things like that, like, oh, it's like a fight. I'm like, it's like a fight. What is Fight Gone Bad? I think it's wall balls, box jumps, row. I'm like,
dude,
okay,
it's way back there somewhere.
Yeah, I know. So it's like, okay, it feels like a fight gone bad if that wall ball's hitting you in the face every time. If you trip and bust your shins on the box, and which happens, and then if someone's kicking you in the liver while you're on the rower, then it feels like a fight gone bad. I'm like, that's not a fight. It doesn't. I get the concept. And I see so many trainers, I'm like, okay, this guy, we need to put this guy on a Basu ball because he's going to be off balance when he fights. And then we're going to hand him these weights and mimic a punch, and it's just silly to me. Yeah. It's just silly, because you talk about movement, not movements. It's fine. These are movements that look like what you're doing in the fight, but they're not what you're doing, and they're not making you better at that. I think in particular, one time I saw a competitive shooter with a 2 to 5 pound dumbbell mimicking the draw motion with a dumbbell. And I'm thinking, man, that's not making you shoot better. What makes you shoot better is shooting a lot.
Yeah.
But let's do other things that might make you better, how do you feel about the term functional fitness? What does it mean? What should it mean? Or how do you see that? Or how can it be used?
Good question. I don't know if I have a definition for it, but then when I hear that and how you're describing it and the mistakes that people make, I go back to principles of strength and conditioning, and then this one in particular is called specificity. So how I break down specificity, I found it best taught. There's a coach named Franz Bosch. He's a track coach. He's awesome. So there's no better sport than the track and field sports performance in our weight room and training to your sport. So it's a lot of closed chain, but we can see, all right, exactly this movement, this preparation, this training got me faster, slower, through farther. So track is an excellent example for then to take that information at high level athletes to assimilate down and apply to a team sport, because team sports they've got head coaches calling plays. There's a lot of luck involved. And then imagine stepping into UT Stadium here in Austin, the real UT, University of Texas.
University of Texas.
I'm kidding. But imagine stepping into DK Royal Stadium, freaking Saturday Night Lights versus Texas, Alabama, biggest game of the season, and it's game number 1. I can't replicate that. So in training now, specificity, this allows me how to think and how to write my program. So I love to use linebackers as an example because there's a lot of translation to other sports and athletics. So within specificity, I'm looking for 3 things when writing the program. So forgive me, I'll back up. So writing the program, I'm using a principle called the SAID principle, specific adaptation to imposed demands. So that's writing a program. I'll come back and how that applies to CrossFit in a moment. But then now in the weight room, me actively coaching, this is going to be the principle of specificity, because we stood up and we compared to arm length before this podcast, and you have a reach. I'm probably one of the few people in the world where my reach is shorter than my body. Makes me a great bench presser. So that is different. How I'm going to teach you to bench press and mini me is going to bench press is different because we got 2 different body lengths. So this is called external structure. So I'm thinking how I'm going to teach the setup within that external structure. I know how my linebackers are going to line up on the field, or I listen and I watch practice. Coach wants this. I need to stress with weights, barbell, that position that coach wants on the field. So I'm going to replicate the external structure, how my athlete is set up to take on the force, which in this case is weights. Then I'm going to get into internal structure. This is going to be my muscular action. I want co-contraction. I'm working with athletes. We're not bodybuilders. We're not isolating anything. I want my whole body moving the weight together. So now this is going to be on my tempo. How this is written in a program, right? It's going to be muscle contractions, eccentrics, isometrics, concentric, different tempo work. So how do I want my muscles moving? Do I want to pause at any point? All of these are examples of internal structure. And then the last one is going to be the force production. So the explosivity in linebackers is going to be pretty awesome. It's pretty explosive. This way of thinking also now introduces an argument for partial squats for my linebackers. Because if they get their ass below their knees, ass to grass squats, they failed on the field. So now, okay, my internal and external structure, I'm only going to a set point, and then I'm compensatory acceleration. I'm reversing that weight as fast as I can. An example of the energy. So that's how I would approach it for field, court, combat sport athletes. But then there is the sport of fitness, the sport of powerlifting, the sport of Olympic weightlifting. I can still take this mindset, but now it changes my external structure. Now I need to get my ass below my knees, so I'm going to adjust my foot position. That way, not toes forward like I want my linebackers and lacrosse players. Now my toes are out, which allows me to work around my hips versus being in a power linebacker position. Now I got to get my ass below my knees. So this changes my external structure, my setup. And now certain power sports, right? I need to touch my chest with a bench, with the bar and hold, and then they call you up. So that's an example of the internal structure. I need to go down, maintain force here, and then fire up when the judge says go. So that changes my muscle action. Now I need to train holding the bottom and turning off my Golgi tendons. This is where box squats come into play. There is a time and place for everything if you know how to use it. So now box squats are in there. I'm not relaxing on the bottom of the squat. I'm holding my tension ass to box, and I'm training my Golgi tendons to increase the capacity of force that they can take on, as an example. And then I'm firing out of the hole. In terms of CrossFit, I'm still going, I would argue, toes forward if I got the hip flexibility. But if I can't get my ass below grass, then I go toes out. And then now I'm energy. I want very economic, slow, cyclical, because it's the sport of economy versus a sport like football or lacrosse or fighting, where we need energy and we need to adjust the skill to a specific energy point and amount to have success that's accurate. Because if I'm super strong, powerful, and fast, but I miss you, you're going to take advantage of that and take me out. Same with football and lacrosse. So all different things at play. I would say we can bring principles to this functional training, and then now we can have a discussion and an argument. I would save that for the programming argument. And what is the sport of fitness? It's general physical preparedness. It's just a ton. And this is a term I love. It's called gradation. This is why we have our female gymnasts. They were so volume heavy as youth. CrossFit's easy, and they step into this. This is, why a lot of wrestlers have success in the sport of fitness, because they were volume, starvation, volume.
Yeah.
Now let's go, and CrossFit's easy. So they've been exposed to that high amount of volume, and it's just gradually getting more and more, versus people that find it late, that crash and burn and get hurt.
I like that. And I think a lot of the issue too comes that coaches they're confused about, or strength conditioning coaches, they're a bit confused of what their job actually is. You don't see this as much at the high level, but you see this at your local gyms, training amateur athletes or people like that. And it's like, your job is not necessarily to make them punch harder. Your job is not necessarily to make them catch better. It's not like your job is to make them better movers, maybe injury prevention, things like this. And I don't think they're not training those things. They think they're training things that have to be very specific translations into the sport at play, when sometimes that's not the job at all. The job is to just armor the athletes, go do what they're going to do. Because at the end of the day, if the training session prevents, and we're calling the training session the session in the gym, the strength conditioning session, if the training session breaks them off and prevents them from then being able to go and perform at practice, it was a fail. It was a net loss for the day, in my opinion. And I think you would agree. Yeah. And I just think a lot of coaches don't know what their job actually is.
No, this is where ego comes into play. So if a kid is showing up on my doorstep, and I train dudes out of my garage. So if they show up, my first question is, what did you do in school today? What'd you do in weightlifting? What'd you do in practice? And now I have to pull different levers and adjust. A lot of the private sector, mom and dad are paying big bucks, so they are sitting in the lobby watching training, and they want to see the kid. They missed everything at school, but now they want to see them work hard. So then the coach hears what they do in school, and, it's garbage, whatever. They don't know what they're doing. And now they want to prove to themselves or the kid that they're awesome. And so they put them through some wild stuff or hard work that then has detrimental effects on the kid. So this is where that load management, for lack of a better term, I'm sure somebody out there has got a better term for me, but listening to whatever they did in school, and now I got to adjust my program because I need to protect them from themselves. Dudes can never do too much bench press or biceps. I'm probably not going to program that because they're going to do it on their own.
They're going to be doing it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's fine. Or protect them from their coach. And this is where a lot of the specificity in teaching them how to lift weights comes into play, and applying enough stress, maybe not to build muscle, but enough stress to wire in that coordination. So that way, when they do go back to school and coach starts to load them up for 1RMs as a freshman in high school, don't do that. Now they're in a better position to understand how to do it as safely as possible and where to put the safety pins, how to approach the bar. So that way, they can put forth their best effort versus getting hurt, because it's still happening. Dudes are showing up to high school, freshmen, maxing out, and then expectations not aligned with the execution, and the kid gets hurt.
You said a freshman shouldn't be doing a 1-rep max. Talk about, and I know your thoughts on this, but talk about what those maxes should be, who should be doing 1-rep maxes, who should be doing 3-rep, 5-rep? What should maxing out look like for different populations and goals?
For specifically high school, diving in, those 13-year-olds, they're in the throes of puberty, 13, 14 years old. They're not the same person today that they were yesterday. So hormonally, height, dudes shoot up overnight, over summer, over Christmas break. They're not the same person. So now if I'm applying my 1RM from their first session, freshman year, where I just taught them how to squat for the first time, and now writing a full program for them to do for the rest of the semester or the rest of the year off of their first ever squat, now my program is setting them up for failure, and I'm decreasing their threshold, their potential by not doing that. So then fives are a great number for that because it's enough reps for us to start to coordinate. And then that group should be doing a linear progression. I then have my sophomores. Again, linear progression because they're not the same kid that they were a year ago. So now we're still coordinating, learning to use the new muscle, the new body they're building. And then again, same with junior. If they're starting to mature and get into that, now we can work into 3s. And then seniors, if my guys are going on to college, I'll introduce 1s. So now they are able to protect themselves because that's the expectation of the next school I'm handing them off to. So it is a phase. Don't fall in love with the ego, the hype, the sexiness of, hey, what's your 1RM bent? No. Teach them that this is the proper, and then show them that they're getting stronger and starting to build some muscle and taking advantage of that and moving forward. So that's where coaching comes into play. It's not any ego on a big board. It's having them having value of where they are right now, today, and who we're working towards you to become tomorrow, because you're not comparing yourself to anybody else other than yourself.
You talk about that ego and how a lot of the maxing is driven that way. I can't tell you my first bench press max. I can tell you my latest, but I can't tell you when I was in high school what I maxed on anything. But I can tell you the moment I looked in the mirror and saw a shadow where my pec was. I can remember there was a line on my bicep. I can remember those little changes because you're a kid, a male going through puberty. You're like, well, I hope that girl notices my biceps starting to pop a little bit. You don't care about those things. And again, I like what you said, like when you're getting to that point where those numbers do matter, that's when they should matter to the coach as well.
Yeah.
And what about maxing when you're not an athlete, and then when you're people like us who are still athletic, we still care about the way we look, feel, perform, to use a quote from Rob Wolf. But should we ever max? And if not, what would programming look like for someone like us as we get older and we have more responsibilities and things going on?
Well, 8s, 5s, 3s are good places to stay. And then, we want size. We want to look the part, lead the part. That's what I like to say. So now I don't want coaches looking like freaking fat caricatures that I imagine you had in your team. I certainly had them on mine that we still make fun of with my high school buds. So yeah, we're looking the part, we're leading the part. So 8s, 5s, 3s are good places to stay. We want that volume to start to fill out our shirt still. So then I'm often hitting a drop set, so working up to a heavy 3 for the day. Then we're going to drop that down to specific percentage that I'm running into the program, hitting a drop set, and then moving into the accessory work. How I like to write programs is full body every day. I don't want just the falling into the trap of I'm just going to do upper body today. We still need healthy knees, legs, ankles, because a lot of the coaches, I want them still demoing movement. That's going to keep them energized and then earn the respect of their athletes. If an old man grabs you and moves you, you feel that power like, okay, maybe he knows what he's talking about. He just has to be good for one. So keeping that in mind, so aiming for full body every day and then splitting into push and pull, front side, back side. So that way we're building that engine on the back, and then what we see and the kids see in front, it looks good.
I like that. And training, it does. We talked a little bit before this because we were kind of catching up, and based off of different programs we followed, it does change. At one point, at most of my life, I'm still young enough to where most of my life was still young. Most of my life, my training was performance-based. It was to be an athlete in high school, and then it was to be an amateur fighter, then it was to be a professional fighter. and it was purely performance based. And as I aged, I got to a point I was no longer fighting. I still do jiu-jitsu and I still train. And so I have to keep that performance aspect. But ultimately, I want to look good. Like that's my goal. And ultimately, I don't have 90 minutes to spend in a gym. It's just not realistic. A lot of time I'm going to my garage where I have weights, or I'm going to a gym 10 minutes down the road, and I'm on a time crunch. Like I am, because I got to get back and help with dinner or get my kids to practice. And how do you think you should prioritize training for, men and women, but as we age and we're no longer athletes, we're just moms, dads, businessmen, how does that training altogether look different, and what kind of programs do you recommend for that?
Avoid the trap of just falling in love with one mode. If you're identifying as a runner, a CrossFitter, and so you're only doing those modes, then we're neglecting a lot. So the aim is to we can tap into energy systems, but then I highly want to encourage and push the older adults to continue to lift weights. So these are aiming to build muscle, gain and maintain healthy joints. And then if you got messed up ankles, knees, or hips, these are the opportunities to still keep them where they're at. Because if you stop using them, that's when all the wheels are going to fall off. So still maintaining the weightlifting, but then targeting, their aerobics, some longer form cardio. If you hate that stuff, hit a ruck, put in a podcast right here, right? And then now we're finding a way to get it in. And by weighting it, now I'm making it more difficult, raising my heart rate without hitting the runs. So finding ways to tap into this stuff and not neglecting other things that I may not like, because that is probably what's going to catch up to you in the long run. And then you have somebody saying, you need to do this.
Yeah, I talk a lot with clients, especially general population, about how much you really need to do. And I find a lot of people, they give up because they're not capable. They don't have the time commitment or the energy commitment to do what they were doing. And they think that, I looked really good when I was doing CrossFit 5 days a week. I no longer have those 5 hours a week to do anything, so I do nothing. Because they attribute that, and it's so common. Like, I don't have the ability to eat like I did or train like I did when I was younger, so therefore I do nothing because I can't reach that. But it's not as much as people think. Like I've had so many clients get massive results from 2 workouts a week. You do have to be a little bit smarter about how those workouts are and your intensity during those workouts. But I've seen time and time again, people improve so much just on that.
Yeah.
What have you found, or are you in agreement with that? What have you found is the minimum? Because a lot of people, they just need the minimum, and then they might find, I can actually do this a third time a week. But what do you find the minimum for, say, someone in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond that you at least need to, for the sake of longevity, for the sake of dying old?
Yeah.
How many days a week do you need to resistance train?
I would say 2 days a week, and then we can aim to split that into 2 hours a week. So then now we're in 4 days of 30 minutes. That's tough to argue and be an excuse.
I like that.
So in writing the workouts, now I'm still push pull, but now I'm splitting up into push pull lower, push pull upper. So this way I'm hitting that full body every single week now. And we can target that within 2 total hours within the week. And then once you're in good enough shape, now we can stack that into 60 minutes, 2 days a week, and then maybe add 15. And gradually, again, gradation, it works the other way as well if we're just getting into the swing of health. Your body wants to move, so you're going to adapt quickly, especially if we're dialing in nutrition and sleep and all the awesome things where you're encouraging and empower people to do.
Yeah, and it really is. A lot of it is I used to, maybe this goes back into the coaches and social emotional development. I used to be very much like, everything you got. How many free hours a week do you have to give to me? We got to do this. Like, how many things can you sacrifice in your diet? I used to think that was important, and we needed to test people almost, like, how much can you give me? And as I've gotten older and more successful, and I've seen what's worked, and I've spoke with other people what's worked, now I look for the lowest hanging fruit and literally the easiest changes people can make, and we start there. We start with the absolute easiest. One of my favorite things to do, is if it's an in-person consultation, I'll do it with a piece of paper. If not, I'll do it just through an email. But I'll say write down 5 to 10 things you're doing right now. You're doing these right now that are keeping you from what you want to be, from the results you want. And they'll write those things out for me. And it might be, I'm having a drink every night. I'm drinking 3 Cokes a day. I'm not working out whatsoever. I'm doing all this. And I'll tell people often, I'm like, okay, for 30 days, this is all we're doing. We're knocking off these. We're going to stop doing this. We're going to start adding this before I make any other changes, because those are the things in their head they've already accepted they need to change. I don't have to talk them into it. They know it. And usually that's enough to make some pretty significant changes. They've already assessed it. Like, these are things I could change. And we normally get some really good results just off of those, because I don't feel like most people don't need new information. They have all the information they need to start making a difference. And since I started having that attitude towards it, I started having a lot more success with clients and finding the small things, because once those small things become habits, you don't have to think about it. It's not an effort anymore. It's just on autopilot. And now let's find another thing to make a habit and put that on autopilot. And before you know it, people are making the big changes that they thought they couldn't do. They've already made them and they never even realized they were doing it.
Yes. So we're speaking to behaviors again here, going full circle. So then my master's in health behavior change. So a lot of health behavior models, which is awesome. So I used a lot of that for connecting with athletes. So then we talk about social emotional awareness. The first one is self-awareness. So now if I'm not aware, and we see it in the weight room, and this is off of this is called a competency model with a kid. So if I give a kid a cue, a direction, say, hey, toes forward on that next squat, and they clearly were not, otherwise I wouldn't have said anything as a coach, and the kid turns and says, I was, or no, I wasn't. Okay, he's got low awareness. So now with the same health behaviors, if they don't know freaking soda's bad for them, right? That's not inherent. That needs to be taught, believe it or not. So now, okay, we're creating that awareness. So if they already have this base level awareness, now the next phase is getting them to act, right? The trans-theoretical model of change. Pre-contemplation, contemplation. We're floating in contemplation. Now we got to take action. And sometimes an action is elimination. So it's finding the connections now and then filling elimination with activities connected to movement. Could be walking, could be lifting, could be, rucking, listening to a podcast, anything. So finding that way. So that's awesome. And there's connections between all of this stuff. It's just now, what does the athlete need? What lever do I need to pull at the right time to have an impact, or do I leave a scar?
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned the model, and that's kind of why I do it. Because at the point that they write that down and they know it, they've already passed that self-awareness and they're already kind of into that pre-contemplation period. And that's why I've found that those are the things that need to change first.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I know you do programming, so you work with people. Like, where can people, we're going to plug that because there's people watching this that just, maybe we change some minds. How can they reach out to you if maybe you spoke to them? It's something that they really liked what you were saying. Like, how can they get programming from you?
Multiple ways. Easiest, Train Heroic, Google, Old Bull. So that's going to be for old coaches like us or people that are looking for time constraint training. Probably an easy way to sum it up. Just made that up. So now, Old Bull, that's that push-pull divide. But then even if you can only go 30 minutes, 4 days a week, you can find a way to follow the 2 days based off that. And then I'm on there and I'm aiming to teach and train and bring behavior into that program. So it's not just X's and O's in programming. Now I'm targeting different character traits each week. Like, it's grit week. We're focusing on focus. So finding different ways, assuming you're in a leadership role within your work team, your family life, or if you're a coach out there, again, look the part, feel the part, lead the part. So that way you can now have a script, because the most valuable time, in my opinion, for a coach is that pre-practice, pre-game huddle, and then the huddle to close us down. So now if our practice is focusing on grit, we're defining grit and where you can practice it in your strength training program, but now you can bring that to your team. So I have 2 different training tracks. One's the old bull for the coaches out there or anybody looking for that time constraint training, and then the athlete. So both are on the same character trait development track. So if I'm a coach leading my team, I know what they're focusing on in terms of character, and I can reinforce that with my pre-huddle and my post-huddle. If they're a captain, now I have a script to hand off to them so they can start to lead their team. So bringing that behavior change into the programming, it's not just X's and O's, it's aiming to be a self-led leader.
Like that. And then my last question so if you were able to go back and talk to, say, first coaching job Tex, first coaching job Chris, what would be the piece of advice you would give that Chris that you now learned later that you wish you would have just been able to know then and apply immediately?
Dude, awesome question. And I mean, that's why I'm building the whole business is for that first year, because I made so many mistakes physically. Like, we didn't have a weight room, we had a fitness center, but then I wanted to train my guys, and we had a back wall on our field where we could play practice catch and throw with lacrosse. So I asked my guys to kick up into a handstand, and one of them tore their rotator cuff. So I took away his senior season because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I had built 4 years of relationship with these guys. So all of the EQ, relating to them, social awareness, I knew what they liked, they didn't like. I knew so much about them just from being boys with them that then became a gap in my coaching later on. Like when I went to Georgetown, I had to fight. I was not only given lacrosse, but also women's lacrosse and crew, boys and girls crew, men's and women's college. So then the women's lacrosse team, like I had a hard time connecting. I assumed everyone's a D1 athlete. They want to work hard and be here. No, way off. So then I actually lost the team. My responsibility was taken away from me because failure to relate and get them to buy into the program. So it was an awesome experience, D3 and coaching my boys, and they were not strong enough for me to hurt them. So I learned how to coach. And at the same time, when I went to college, it was just such a gap within my EQ, a D1, because I was handed a team that, we loved each other. So I would aim to really focus on the EQ and look for more coaching opportunities. I probably would have finished my grad school year and then dipped out away from that team, but the bond was just so close, and it was great. We had a great time. So, yeah, man, it would be seek out. Fortunately, I found that out a lot of the hard ways and continue to travel the world and work with so many different programs and coaches and really learn out there. But still, I actively apply, coach in middle school and high school here, just pennies on the dollar, so I can aim to apply and think and learn, so that way I can distribute more information for coaches out there and even parents to learn on Captains and Coaches podcast and captainsandcoaches.com. So shameless plug, but yeah, man, dude, so much. And there was that first year, and then even my first year as a captain, that was even more of a learning experience because I'm a quiet kid and stepping into a leadership role as a second-year player where I got these stud seniors that now I got to lead. So a lot of lessons learned, man. That's the whole origin story of the company, and aiming to just give back to the game, everything, and elevate, raise the game together.
This has been a cool conversation for me because I learned things in it that can help, because I still coach and I still consult. So I know I learned things, and not only do I coach, I have high-level athletes at the highest level. I consult NCAA teams, but I'm a coach of my 6-year-old's football team.
Oh yeah.
So I got to learn things in the conversation that I can apply to all of those different levels of athletes. So I know I learned a lot from it, and I know that there's going to be people watching that are coaches or maybe athletes that I think we covered things that coaches and athletes can both benefit from. So I appreciate your time, and man, I'm excited to see what Captains and Coaches does, because I don't think that that's really a market that's being tapped into properly. So you might be onto something and be the one to first popularize the importance of that. And I hope so.
I hope so too, man. And just find different threads within performance. Early in my career, it was the warm up and that missed opportunity to then develop athleticism and conditioning and capacity and all that good stuff. So made strides there, but now I'm just taking one beat forward. What's the huddle before we got to start warming up?
Well, I appreciate it, man. I'm excited.
Cool. I'm grateful. Welcome to Austin, dude. Thanks for coming out here.
Appreciate it.
I want to thank you guys for watching, and also a word of thanks to our sponsors who have made this episode possible. All I ask is that you guys please hit the like and subscribe button, as it helps the podcast grow and so we can continue to bring on some great guests for you guys. I'll see you in the next one.